There have been recent reports that have stated that some 2,061 actors were employed during this past season from a total membership in Actors Equity Association, which is the union for professional actors, a total membership of 13,000. Now, this kind of figure doesn't sound like the type of profession that would attract people, and yet the ranks seem to be swelling each year. So I think the question we can concern ourselves with today is, how does an actor survive in this kind of a surplus labor market? And also, can he survive by merely being an artist? Or doesn't he have to have a certain sense of business today, as would any good salesman or any kind of an executive who has something to sell? So, Eddie, as a vice president of Equity, would you say that this 2,061 working out of a total membership of 13,000 is a realistic, or better still, a typical kind of figure for a theatrical season? Is it always this bad? Has it usually looked this glum in the past few years?
No, that's a pretty typical figure. Actually, the 2,061 figure that you have here, I think, is a little misleading. That probably is the height of the winter season in New York. I have a feeling that during the summertime, when more actors are employed in stock and throughout the country, that the figure is considerably higher. But I would say it's pretty average, yes.
So it gets better, but never, I'm sure, would it approach having a majority of 13,000 people working.
No, never.
Right. Well, if these are Equity's figures, there are many other theatrical unions. Probably both you and Jay have worked with AFTRA, Television and Radio, and SAG, Screen, AGVA, Variety Artists, and AGMA, the musical artists. And is the employment picture, well, Jay, as far as you're concerned, as bad in those areas, or there's a great deal more television we hear than stage work? Does the picture look
terrible on television, and yet people still come into the business, and they still make a success of things, and many of us still make our entire living from the business. Too many actors, because they have a talent, that the people who employ that talent will come and seek them out. Not true at all. We all know of many brilliant actors who work hardly ever. And when you see them work, you think, my Lord, where have they been all these years? Such a brilliant talent. On the other hand, you find actors that have very little talent by our standards who work all the time. And you discover there's some place in between, a combination of businessman and experienced expert actor, which each person must kind of arrive at. A person with all the talent in the world can never get a job unless he makes himself available, makes his jobs known, sends out cards, knows people, has a good active agent. On the other hand, many people with very little talent, if they have excellent promotional abilities or are personally endowed, as are many girls in the business, can get ahead brilliantly, but because they are pushing a certain thing. And it's a combination of business versus talent, I think, that makes a success no matter where you go.
This is precisely what I want to get into today. I think it was Merrill Jones that wrote the book called Acting is a Business. It is. Well, Jay, let me ask you, as a working actor and one who's built quite a reputation of managing your own career on a business-like basis, probably the epitome of the book Act. You obviously think then that the amount of time and energy you spend on promoting yourself to promote a job is a necessary part of the actor's life today. In other words, to get on stage, you've got to do an awful lot off stage.
Yeah, very important. And my analogy is always this. If I were in the business of selling an automobile, a Ford or a Chevrolet, and I were ashamed of Ford or Chevrolets, I shouldn't be in the business. I'm ashamed of my ability as Jay Barney as an actor. Therefore, I have no qualms at all about saying what I've done, the kind of notices I've gotten, the kind of reviews I've gotten, and the people with whom I've worked. Therefore, my book is full. This is a very snobbish business. If I go into a casting director, he doesn't know who I am. I've discovered a long time ago he's impressed by with whom I've worked. Therefore, if I can show him Jose Ferrer and James Stewart and Tallulah Bankhead and Shirley Booth, without even opening my mouth, he is already on my side because he respects the people with whom I've worked. And mentally, he probably says, well, if he's good enough to be Miss Bankhead's leading man, he certainly is good enough for my off-Broadway show. Therefore, about half the pictures in my book are, in a sense, name-dropping pictures. The rest of the pictures are pictures of myself in various kinds of character makeup. So that I'm selling Jay Barney all the time. Now, the problem is you can't blow your own horn so much that somebody shoves it down your throat. And the technique is to stay in their mind without getting in their hair, and this becomes a very fine line. I, for example, have lists of lady casting directors in New York to whom I take a yellow rose about once a month. Now, the idea of giving gifts is to keep it so small it couldn't possibly be conceived as a bribe. I don't give away cases of liquor, as many radio people used to, or buy parts of housing and furniture, or even cars and bicycles and scooters for their children. But I figure that a yellow rose couldn't possibly, in their estimation, be a bribe, but it does make my name cross their memory. And as you both know, and I certainly do from having cast shows myself, it is one thing to know a person and his ability and to admire him. It's something else quite again to think of that person at the right time.
Then you do feel it definitely is a promotion kind of thing that must be done.
Exactly, and as long as it isn't based upon phony quotes or doesn't become unpleasant or distasteful or is legitimate, then I think the oftener you can make your name cross that person's mind, the more jobs you're going to get.
Well, Eddie, being sort of a triple threat man, actor, singer, and dancer, when you're not working or when an actor isn't working, just like a businessman, a sportsman, what can an actor do to keep himself in readiness short of going to constant classes? Doesn't this reach a point of no return? Does an actor have anything to do to keep himself in practice? Like a golfer can go out and play golf, but an actor can't always act.
Yes, first of all, you do get to the point of saturation going to classes. Not that you stop learning, but you just get to the point where you feel you should be working, and mentally I think you almost resist. My family keeps asking me what I do when I'm not working, and it's hard to convince them that I'm busier when I'm unemployed.
Oh, absolutely.
Proves and everything else. But when you're not working, it's, as Jay said, it's a constant trial. You're seeing people, you're promoting yourself, and trying to do it with some taste so as not to make yourself offensive to people. Many actors keep in condition by going to workshops where they work with other actors on scenes. ELT shows is the best example I can think of going out and constantly working, and this is for no pay. It's hard for me to imagine a plumber who wasn't working who would go out and work on pipes just to keep his fingers nimble. But actors are very conscientious people, and they must always be doing something that will improve their craft.
Well, then you're improving the craft is the key word, I think, but we use the expression of making rounds. Actually, making rounds isn't quite as specific as it would sound then, is it? You're not necessarily making rounds to an office because they're casting something tomorrow. Well, I think it's true, too, isn't it, that nothing gets work like having work. Isn't, in other words, a showcase, whether it's a Broadway show or an ELT show, doesn't this arouse more interest in you simply because you can be seen rather than making the rounds? Don't you often get into the vicious circle of, yes, I've heard of you, but I don't know your work. When you're doing something, let me know. You're trying to make rounds to see an agent, to have an agent see you, rather get you work that has to bombard the casting director before they can get you a reading. Or can you do this pretty much on your own? Do you feel the agent is absolutely essential? In California, I take it is. World.
I think without ever discussing this with each other, there's no question of the fact you cannot exist in California without an agent.
So how large do they loom in the picture?
That varies. I could say you could do very well without an agent when you really need one the most, which is at the beginning. Agents are not always very helpful to you unless you find someone who sees in you something that is to them very interesting. They think they could make a lot of money on you in the future. But suddenly a performer finds that he's getting to be fairly well known in the industry, and he is able to approach casting directors and producers and directors whom he knows personally, and suddenly the agent swoops in, and there he is. Now, there are very many good agents in this business, and they're very necessary because they can speak for you the way you cannot for yourself without sounding really like a conceited ass. You know, you cannot blow your own horn too much without really sounding ridiculous sometimes. An agent can. That's his job. He's there to tout you and to fight for you. Sections of the industry is that it's possible for almost anybody to be seen, get a reading or at least a hearing of some kind for a Broadway show. Most casting offices, producers' offices are almost always open. You can send in a picture or a resume or go up and be seen. It doesn't mean that they're going to give you a reading, because if they need a short, fat man and you're a tall, thin guy, you know, it's not possible. But they will screen people, and naturally, if you have a good agent and a well-known agent, your chances are much better for getting in the door. Everybody announces the days that she will see people and the hours and asks people to come in and see her. There's no secret getting into that office.
But there's still no such thing except for ELT, which is one of the reasons that Equity helps to back ELT, because it does have open casting. There is virtually no such thing as open casting, and when we're looking at these figures of 13,000 actors, really, how could there be? But seldom do you read an ad, do you, saying, we need these characters, open casting today. I'd like to get into something that has always fascinated me, and that is, how can a union that's affiliated with AFL-CIO help an actor? It seems almost incongruous that the actor has a labor union behind him, although we've just been talking about the kind of labor problems that exist for an actor. But Eddie, for instance, in what ways can a union help an actor? He can't get him jobs, I assume.
Yeah, that's true. It helps an actor really in two ways. First of all, by setting certain basic minimums in salary. We see that a producer cannot pay less a living wage. I don't really call $45 for off-Broadway. If that wage, then I'm living in the wrong. This is one type of protection that the union has. The other, and an equally important type of protection, is to protect the actor from himself. And there again, you can only do so much to protect an actor from a manager, but when it comes to protecting an actor from himself, you have a little more difficult job. California, for instance, is a great field. We have a lot of actors who have recently moved to California. This past couple of years, we've seen an influx there of almost 1,000 equity members. For years, we had a steady figure of maybe something like 1,500 equity members on the West Coast, and now it's about 2,500. So everybody is going out to the land of opportunity, not so much to work in the theater, but movies and, I guess, primarily television. But in order to get jobs, you find that people will do anything to be seen out there, including changing their name to work in little non-union theaters so that casting directors and agents will come down and see them. And so our job, as I say, equally important job, is to protect an actor from himself, from giving away what he should be selling. And if an actor wanted to give away his services, that would be fine with me if it didn't involve other actors. But it does, and so we have to protect the actors from that.
If we call then professional actors members of equity, this is really the only term to judge a professional against a non-professional, isn't it, if you belong to the union? Well, how do you become a member of equity? You can't just go up and say, here's my initiation fee, I want to join.
This is the funny thing. You have to get a job first. Now, everybody says, well, you can't get a job unless you're a member of Actors Equity, and you can't be a member of Actors Equity unless you get a job, and then where do you start? Well, that's not quite true. You can get a job without being a member of Actors Equity. You can go up to any office and get a reading for a show if you're so lucky, and a member of Actors Equity. They can hire you. But once you sign a contract, you must join, and therefore you get your membership. But there is nothing so restrictive. We are not a closed union. There is a difference between a closed shop and a closed union. We are an open union. We are a closed shop.
Oh, a good number of people, if it's jumped 3,000 in the past couple of years. But isn't it mainly in summer stock? Isn't there an apprentice type earn a union affiliation?
To have what they call apprentices, and these people pay, for the most part, for that privilege of painting sets and watching and getting small parts. And in most instances, I can't be too sure of this, I think it's after 2 seasons of serving as an apprentice, you must become an equity member.
But you have to have...
For us, we're not trying to get new members. Our intention of saying, we need the new members because we have more than we need right. We have to prevent people from being taken advantage of again. And by using apprentices who would pay the producer, what they were doing, in effect, was taking jobs away from professional actors. And so we didn't want to stop the apprentice system, but we figured that it should not be taken advantage of.
Can the union be as helpful to an actor, let's say, as an agent can, if an actor has a job, is working in a show? Will the union help him with certain contractual details, or is this absolutely up to the actor, his agent, or can the actor always go to the union for legal advice?
One of the greatest problems is anything that is not contained in the contract. We do not recognize, the union that is. And very often actors will make private agreements with producers calling for certain conditions. And equity must approve this. And we do this so that the actor will come to the office and say, this is what they want me to sign, or they've told me or suggested, or I want to sign this. And our attorneys will look over that, or the staff, to make sure that it's above board and quite proper. And then a copy of this must be approved by us and be on file with us, and then it becomes part of the contract. But so many times prior to doing this, or possibly even now, an actor will make an agreement with a producer, and it is a little shady in some instances, but we do not recognize it. And of course we're there at all times. We have a big legal staff and lots of people to keep the actor out of trouble, and to help him when he needs advice about this sort of thing.
Commuting back and forth between the West Coast and here, really, and decentralization, of course, is a problem in the theater, but if an actor, either as an artist or an artisan, wants to get the kind of background, experience, what have you, that will make him ready for anything that might come to him in New York, where can he go, aside from, you've mentioned Los Angeles to do some television work, what have you, but it's a rare exception now, isn't it, that an actor will come to New York with a good deal of solid professional experience behind him and sort of know what to expect in terms of what you've been talking about today as to the business end of it, how to sell himself. If it isn't New York, it's almost nowhere.
Yes, there are, I suppose, Chicago, Detroit, the major cities where there might be some opportunity, where there are universities with good drama departments and opportunities to work with good stock companies. But for the most part, and this is only my opinion, it may not be true at all, that New York is the one place where a performer really can learn all of the things that are necessary. He may not learn them, but everything is here waiting for him. And I don't know where else you can get this kind of training. I don't think it exists in Los Angeles the way it does here.